If you're a dad and a business owner and you're going to bed every single night, beating yourself up for all of the things that you didn't do, kind of going to bed feeling like a failure despite knowing that you're not, this might be one of the most important videos that you watch today. All right. So if we haven't met, my name is Mario Minner. I'm the founder of Driven Dadpreneur. And this channel is all about helping dads and business owners put systems in place to help them grow their businesses without sacrificing time for what matters the most, which is family. All right. So I want to tell you a quick story. And actually, before I got to give you a heads up, I'm moving my office, setting up in my daughter's room. And if you need things to be perfect, I'm not your guy. So let's roll with this. All right. So about 5 years ago, when I had first started my business, I was working my corporate job and I was building my business on the side. I'm married, I've got a couple of girls, and it was so hard to get my business off the ground. I was recording podcasts, I was creating content, I was reaching out, working with clients, but there would be days where I would be so busy with other things going on, and I would kind of be laying in bed and I would be asking myself, what did I even do today? Did I even move the needle forward? Did I make any sort of progress? And I would just be like circling in my mind, like, what did I even do? And when I didn't have evidence of progress that I made, my mind really started to spiral. And so I started reaching out to different coaches and different people for advice. And everybody told me to have this super detailed and like extravagant morning routine. You've probably seen hundreds of videos where it talks about that. It's like wake up, pray, gratitude journal, exercise, go for a walk, like grounding, whatever it was like these super long, elaborate morning routines. And for me as a dad, like a lot of times I would be woken up multiple times in the middle of the night, or my kids would wake me up like super early, sometimes before 5 a.m. And you kind of realize as a dad, your mornings don't really belong to you a lot of times if your kids have different like sleep schedules. And all the advice was just like, just focus more on your morning routine. That'll make you feel a sense of progress. But it just didn't work for me with having like a super detailed morning routine. So then what I started to do is I started doing the opposite. Instead of focusing on my morning routine, I started focusing on my evening routine because I felt like that was a little bit like something that I could control a little bit more. Where after my girls went to bed, there was usually about an hour, hour and a half where I had to myself. And over time of working one-on-one with other dads and business owners, I started to recognize that everybody had this problem as well. And it wasn't just like one problem, it was a series of problems that was specific to very driven entrepreneurs who also had young kids. And like if you've done anything, when you go through a specific process, you start to recognize patterns. And with going through one-on-one coaching with almost 80 business owners with young kids at this point, I started to recognize a few patterns that people had that were causing a lot of these mental loops at the end of the night. And so over time, I started to develop questions that you could ask to completely solve those problems and to flip it. And I wanted to walk you through that because this 5-minute evening routine and these 5 questions are the things that finally got me to flip and to feel this sense of progress that actually moved the needle. And I want to share them with you today because I actually put them together in an evening journal. And I've been using this for the past, honestly, I've been doing this journaling process for the past couple of years. Finally put this evening journal together last year. And I want to walk you through what those 5 questions that you can ask yourself at the end of the night to really start to flip and feel that sense of progress. So the first thing is what I call the progress question. Because if you're watching this, you're probably very driven, you're highly motivated, but your brain has a problem. It has a flaw, which is that it always focuses on the things that you didn't do compared to the progress that you made. And so no matter what you achieve, if you reached out to 10 prospects today, your mind is going to tell you, yeah, but you should have done 15. If you went to the gym for 30 minutes, your brain's telling you, like, yeah, that's not really a win though, because normally I do an hour. If, like you get it. You're wired as a high achiever. So the first thing that you've got to do is you've got to ask yourself the progress question, which is what are a few wins that I made today? What are a few things that I made progress on today? And what I do is I just write down 3 wins from today. Now, a win can be anything that's your effort, success, or progress. So start writing down what's one thing that you did to move your business forward. What's one thing that you did to spend time with your family? Wins can be business, mindset, personal, family, can be any of those, but you've got to write down your wins from today. And these can be really small because your brain just needs evidence that you've moved forward. And once you have a little bit of progress, it's going to change the way that you feel. So that's the first thing. It's the progress question. The second thing is what I call the Kairos question. So when you study time, the Greeks actually had 2 words for time, right? Like in English, we just have time, but the Greeks had 2 words. One was chronos and one was kairos. Chronos was like the basic sense of time that we have, like quantity of time. But if you know, or if you've experienced it, there's certain things that happen in your life where it's really more focused on the quality of time. It's kind of more of like a divine moment. And as a dad, a lot of times what I really wanted to focus on was more of those quality moments, this quality time with my kids. And that's where the Greeks refer to it as kairos. So, what you want to do is not just focus on the progress that you made, the results that you got. You don't want to miss out on the moments that matter. So, you've got to ask yourself this one question, which is what's one moment I appreciated today? That is can be a moment with your wife, can be a moment with your kids, can be a moment with a client, can be a moment with somebody on your team. But when you start to prioritize and pay attention to the moments in your life, that's going to feel that your heart with that sense of, yeah, I really like lived today. I really made the most of my time today. And so that's the second thing, because a lot of times business owners just focus on the results that they're getting. They don't focus on the moments that matter with the people that they love. And then that fills you with a sense of guilt. So when you shift, you start documenting those moments that matter, then you're going to feel that sense of gratitude. So next one, do you focus more on what is in your control or what's out of your control? If you're like me, if you're a very driven, motivated person, you really like control. You really like feeling like you can do anything. You really like feeling like you can, conquer anything that comes your way. But the more that I've grown in my faith as a Christian, the more that I've realized how little is in my control. And the things that would stress me out, a lot of times were things that were out of my control that I needed to just surrender to God. And so the next prompt is what I call the surrender question. And this is a question you can ask yourself of what do I need to surrender or let go of tonight? Because when you're laying in bed at night, a lot of times you're overplaying all of these scenarios that could go wrong or could happen or, could throw you off. But you really, like, if you don't get those out of your head, they're just going to play as a loop in your head constantly until something happens. And so this is a place to bring up all of those emotions, all of those worries, all of those concerns, and get them on paper. Because guess what? When you get them on paper, then the loop stops playing in your head. And this is one of the most important questions, but it also a lot of times it's one of the hardest questions that you need to answer, which is just like, what do I need to surrender? It's really just a way of saying like, what do I need to let go of? What's something that's not in my control that I just need to like trust God? So wanted to share that one. So these first 3 prompts, like 3 wins from today, what's one moment I appreciated today, and what do I need to surrender or let go of? That's kind of looking at the current day. Then when we get into the 4th question, this is where you start to jump ahead to the future and you start to ask yourself, what are 3 wins for tomorrow? I call this the clarity question because high performers, they've done studies on this, they really just have a higher level of clarity than the average person. They know who they are, they know where they're going, they know how they're going to get there. And all you've got to do is ask yourself, what are 3 wins that I'm going to accomplish tomorrow? When you do that, that sense of overwhelm starts to fade away. That sense of like, I don't know what I need to do, that goes away. And you start to just narrow in, what do I need to accomplish tomorrow? And then you write those down. And then the last question, this is kind of a question that I like to ask to just wrap it all up and to summarize it. It's the Kaizen question, which is, am I better today than yesterday? So Kaizen is a Japanese term which talks about continuous progress, continuous improvement. And that's ultimately what it's about. If you've ever read Atomic Habits by James Clear, he talks about the importance of just getting 1% better. Because if you get 1% better every day over the span of a year, I think you're like 36 times ahead of where you would be if you just stayed the same. So 1% improvements every single day, they're not going to really show up. You're not really going to notice them, but it's the compounded growth of that over time where things really start to snowball and things really start to change. And that's really just a yes or no question. Am I better today than I was yesterday? You could even ask yourself, am I 1% better today? And like, honestly, I've if you go through this process and you identify one moment, if you identify one win, if you start to get clarity on one thing for the next day, the answer to this question is almost always yes. But some of my clients that are super hard on themselves will say like, no, I didn't get better today. Well, if that's really the truth, then all you need to do is, what did I learn from today and how am I going to, bounce back tomorrow? So really, this is just a question that you can ask yourself at the end of the night to reflect on, am I better today than I was yesterday? And to help you just keep making those 1% improvements. So those are the 5 questions. It really does not take more than 5 minutes. But just to recap, the 5 questions are: 3 wins from today. What's one moment I appreciated today? What do I need to surrender or let go of? What are 3 wins for tomorrow? And am I better today than I was yesterday? So if you've made it to the end, I appreciate you. Let me know which of the 5 questions resonated the most with you. I'll drop those in there and you can get started with this tonight. I would challenge you, just pull out a piece of paper. Before I even had this, I just literally used a piece of paper and just wrote it out. But also, I'll drop a link to the Driven Evening Journal. You can get it on Amazon. It'll just make it a lot easier. It's got a little quote and it's got the prompts. You pull in the date, and I'm actually almost all the way through this one, going to be getting a new one soon. But I hope that this helped. Comment below which was the one that resonated with you. I'll see you all in the next one.